evening and welcome back. Remember, last week we talked about the changes the government of India had brought to the rules of political funding. Now, these changes have been made over the course of a couple of years. But there are fundamentally three important changes made by this government. One, the introduction of electoral bonds that allow for anonymous donations of a greatly large amount of money. The BJP has received donations worth 1,000 crore rupees, the Congress about 200 crore rupees. The second is a change in the definition of foreign companies, which allows fundamentally money to flow in from sources overseas. And the third, a change in the rules that used to allow only companies that were at least 3 years old to donate only a fraction of their profits. Both of these caps have been removed, and as a result, shell companies or fake companies can be set up to fund political parties and funnel money from unknown sources. The Supreme Court is currently hearing a case on the matter, and the Election Commission has filed an affidavit in the Supreme Court in response to the PIL. It says, shockingly, that the Election Commission had written to the Law Ministry not once but twice to say that the change in law will impact the transparency of political party funding. The Election Commission has also said that the new laws will allow for unchecked foreign funding, and this will lead to policies of India being influenced by foreign companies. This is worrying because the big question to now ask is this: why did the government of India go ahead and change the rules in spite of the Election Commission's concerns and objections? That's the big question we are asking tonight. Joining me on the show at this point, I have Meghnad, who's a journalist who has been tracking this entire movement very closely. He's the associate editor at News Laundry. Major General Anil Verma is the head at ADR. Now, Major General Verma has filed the PIL that's being discussed in Supreme Court. He also filed a case a couple of years ago about the fact that both the Congress and the BJP had received illegal funding from a company called Vedanta, and a lot of what has happened has started with that first case. Amiben Yagnik is a member of the Rajya Sabha with the Congress Party, Bhaskar Ghosh, spokesperson for the BJP. Karuna Nandi is a lawyer with the Supreme Court, and we'll also have Prashant Bhushan, senior advocate, join us through the course of this conversation. I welcome all of you. Good evening. My first question, of course, is to Major General Anil Verma. This proves to us, and now that the Election Commission has put this down in court, in front of the Supreme Court, that the government changed the rules despite concerns and objections by the Election Commission. So there is nothing legal about these change in these rules. Major General Verma.
For the benefit of the viewers, I would just quickly go over certain background information. One is that we had filed 3 petitions.
Yes.
One was against the electoral bonds, and the second one was the FCRA case, and the third was that the political parties should come under the RTI. So the Supreme Court finally, after a couple of years, decided to hear them. So they were clutched together, and the hearing was on 26th March. And then the bench comprising of the Chief Justice and others, they decided that they would hand it over to another bench, and therefore the hearing has now been fixed for April the 2nd. Now, the Election Commission's affidavit, we've just got to see it in the evening, and I'm happy that they have confirmed the stand which they had taken earlier in writing with the government regarding the electoral bonds. So since 2 of these cases are linked, the FCRA case and this electoral bond case, which we had discussed earlier also in a discussion, it is important that we know the connection, which we can subsequently learn. But I want to highlight 2-3 things. One is that one of the MPs, Shri Nadimul Haq, on 18 December 2018, had raised a question regarding the knowledge of the Ministry of Law and Justice as to whether they had got anything in writing from the Election Commission of India pertaining to the electoral bonds, to which the Minister of State, I think, in the Parliament had said that they had not received anything. And this thing was brought out by an RTI activist. He had asked for the documents, and it was very clear that these 2 letters, which the Election Commission has referred to in their affidavit today, had been given there, and the Ministry of Law and Justice had sent those documents to the Department of Economy Affairs.
Yes.
And they said that we haven't heard from the Economy Affairs this thing. So on the last day of the Rajya Sabha, Mr. Haq had even filed a breach of privilege in the Parliament. Now, coming to the question of the affidavit of the Election Commission, we are very happy that they have taken this stand, because the government's stand on this issue, which also we have seen just now, the reasons given by the government don't hold any water in any way. Firstly is the question of transparency. When the donor's identity is hidden, so what type of transparency are we talking about? The digital part is fine, that the KYC is there and all that. But the issue is that having amended the Income Tax Act, the Companies Act, the RBI Act, and all the other, the Representation of the People's Act, you have removed all restrictions which were there earlier. That 7.5% is the maximum limit on which the profits, the company should be a profit-making company. There is a specific thing in the Representation of the People's Act that you cannot accept foreign funding. Now, after having removed all that, nobody knows that these companies which are donating, what is their background? They may be shell companies, the money may be routed from foreign, and affidavit. This can open the route of foreign funding, and foreign companies can control our polity. Now, isn't that a dangerous thing? I mean, after having amended all these acts, so basically the ADR had filed the petition asking for the government to do away with the implementation of all these amendments which had been done, and secondly for scrapping of the electoral bond scheme.
Yes, Major General Verma, let me just bring in some points of view here. Bhaskar Ghosh with the BJP. Mr. Ghosh, it is now obvious after our last conversation, now that the Election Commission has submitted this to the Supreme Court, that the government did not have the consent of the Election Commission. The Election Commission had objections to the changes you were making, but you went ahead and made them anyway. What is this level of corruption that has come in? What kind of funding were you looking forward to? Why did the government make changes to political funding rules, despite the fact that the Election Commission did not want these changes to be made?
See, first of all, let me answer you one thing, that I do not know in detail what Election Commission has replied or submitted to Supreme Court.
Send it.
But let me put some facts in front of you, which will unveil a lot of truth, a lot of facts. Number one, let us see the issue of the bond and purchase of the bonds. Issues of the bonds is strictly to the RBI.
Mr. Ghosh, I'm going to stop you. I'm going to stop you. No. I'm going to stop you because I will read out to you what the Election Commission has said to the Supreme Court, and I want you to respond to what the Election Commission has said, because you yourself have said on this channel that the only voice that matters during the election is the Election Commission, and nobody, no government, nobody can stand in the way of the Election Commission. This is what the Commission has said, that amendments carried out to the Income Tax Representation of People's Act and the Companies Act will have serious repercussions and impact on the transparency aspect of political finance and funding of political parties. That's one point. A second point, and this one is more worrying, it says it cannot be ascertained whether political party funding will be taken in donation under this Act of Representation of People's Act, which prohibits political parties from taking funds from foreign sources. This will allow unchecked foreign funding of political parties in India. It will lead to Indian policies being influenced by foreign companies. Now, this was sent in a letter to the Law Ministry, and the Law Ministry has ignored the letters of the Election Commission. Now, please tell me, why is the Law Ministry of the government ignoring letters and warnings from the Election Commission while changing its rules?
Yeah, Faye, I can answer this. First of all, the apprehension of the election commissions that there will be a free flow of black money into the election process or into the electoral process. I personally don't think that it is a flow of the black money, because before
disagreeing
this
with the Election Commission?
new electoral bonds induction, there was a flow of
About the flow of
I mean,
money,
this
sir.
is
It's not
this
about
to
the
be
flow of
contested in
black
the
money.
court,
That's
so
not
I have
the
no one to.
point.
I have. No, that's what I'm telling you. That what is the objective of this electoral bonds? It is not electoral reforms. It is
It's the flow of all
it
money,
is just to
including black
identify
money, but all money.
or the.
Mr. Ghosh, are you aware of the fact that it was not just electoral
Yeah, yeah. I'm
bonds,
talking
but the
about- I'm
government of
talking about
India
electoral
changed the
bonds.
funding laws for foreign inflows into political parties? You've changed the funding laws for corporate
Yes, I'm
money
coming one by
into,
one.
into political parties.
Allow me to come one by one. If I'm cross-talks, then I cannot answer you. Either allow me to answer, then if it's something wrong, please contest that. First of all, the government of India's objective was to make a greater transparency of electoral funding as well as trailing of the black money. Now these electoral bonds are essentially issued by the RBI, and it has been totally trailed by the respective banks because they are KYC
So can we
checked.
find out how many
Now the
electoral
question,
bonds
which
have gone to the
political
BJP
party?
and
This
who has
question
made
is
these
that
donations? Will you release that information to the public?
But accountability, let me finish.
I want
Faye,
the information.
Let me finish.
Who has donated to your
I
party,
need to
Mr.
finish.
Ghosh? Can we
Now-
find out where
now
the 1,000
question
crore
of
rupees came from?
accountability.
You want transparency? I want transparency. Who donated
That's what I'm telling you.
1,000
We are
crore
not
rupees to the
concerned who has
BJP?
donated. We are concerned that we have got a legitimate. We are concerned that we have got a legitimate instruments to be encashed within a specified
No.
periods.
Tell
and
us
but
who
we are doing
donated.
it,
Who
which has been
donated?
checked by the bank and RBI authorities.
You've made it
Number two,
legitimate,
we
sir.
doesn't. First of all, everyone is citizen of India.
No.
Everyone is
Some
citizen
of
of
them are
India, and
foreign
all
also.
the money which has come through bank is properly sanitized.
Criminals are also citizens
and
of
we
India,
are
Mr. Ghosh.
accountable
That does
through
not
election
amount to-
commission
that
because
does not
there
amount to
there is
transparency.
only one
It
account.
was
Okay, but
dirty
you know, I'm
before,
not going to
now
go down
it's
this road. One
sanitized.
second. Mr. Ghosh, I'm going to stop you there. I want to bring in the rest of the panel at this point. The argument here, we are not going to argue. Mr. Ghosh, the Election Commission calls this method non-transparent. The Election Commission calls this method non-transparent. Why did the government go ahead in spite of warnings from the Election Commission? That's the question we're asking today. Because if it's non-transparent to the Election Commission, that's good enough for me. I'm not going to argue with the Election Commission. You've told me several times over the last 2 weeks that what the Election Commission says is true. Karuna Nandi, do you believe that the government should have paid heed to what the Election Commission has said?
Essentially, what's happened here, Faye, and when it came out, it was somewhat surprising that the entire media and, you know, the entire opposition was not in huge uproar even at the time, right? And when I saw this, because what it does is that it takes, as Mr. Ghosh says, the money gets sanitized, right? The money gets disguised and sanitized. So what used to be suitcases that went to ministers' houses in order to fund the party have now become so-called electoral bonds. Because now any company, whether it's foreign, whether it's a big Indian company, whether they're dirty, whether they're clean, will now fund the majority of the election. So whoever wins, and now we know that elections run very much on money. So for example, in the last election, we saw on one day
That's the job of the bank and RBI
faces
to
of the current
sanitize
Prime
it.
Minister on every single front page, right? So therefore, what happens? When you get the money from, you're beholden to those companies. What happens when you are beholden to those companies? There are changes to environmental laws which have happened in the last 5 years. There are changes to, and this is before even the bond system came in. There are changes to pro-poor policies. There are changes to policies that would benefit the citizen in favor of large companies, and therefore the result now is the kind of crony capitalism that suffers also from a complete lack of, so now nobody knows where the, if there is an anti-citizen policy happening, nobody will know whether that anti-citizen policy is happening because the party in power was funded by the company that it is benefiting. Now, this is something that was done in a money bill, and so therefore it was pushed through the Lok Sabha. It doesn't have to go to the Rajya Sabha, the money bill. There was no reason it had to happen like that. And the second thing is that if you look at examples around the world, for example, there was a lot of outrage in the United States because of super PACs, because of political action committees.
Yes, yes.
And which are, where companies can give money and both the Democratic Party and the Republican Party can be funded through the super PACs. There was a lot of outrage around it. However, even there is transparency. Nowhere in the world, as far as I know, is this kind of dark money allowed under cover of, complete blanket secrecy.
Yes.
And I think this is possibly the biggest problem.
Yes.
In one of the biggest problems in our polity today. And I really, really hope that the courts are able to intervene in time to deal with it.
But actually,
because otherwise we will have 5 years of policy
Ms. Nandi,
that are going to not be an anti-citizen.
Mr. Bhushan joins us right now. Mr. Prashant Bhushan.
I just want to have a
Yes,
query.
I will come back to you. Mr. Bhushan, here's my question. Ms. Karuna Nandi just said that she hopes the Supreme Court intervenes in time. But the money has already arrived into the accounts of the political parties. What would that intervention actually be? Can the money be returned? Can these parties, like the Election Commission has said, encouraging transparency, can they be required to declare the sources of the funds? Would that be the transparency that the Indian voter deserves at this point? Prashant Bhushan.
Yes, that's something that the court can do. That is to make an order saying, because the banks would know and therefore the government would know. But other than that, you see the amendments which have been made in the Companies Act, in the Income Tax Act, in the Representation of People Act, are all for ensuring that there is complete anonymity, that neither does the company have to declare in their accounts as to that they purchased electoral bonds and who they gave it to, nor do they have to disclose it to the income tax, nor do they have to disclose it to the Election Commission. So these are just like notes, like bank notes of 1 crore rupees or 10 lakh rupees, because all the electoral bonds that have been purchased so far are only in these two denominations of 1 crore or 10 lakhs. And about 2,000 crores have been purchased so far and given to political parties, and 95% of that have gone to the BJP alone. So we have been saying that this paves the way for straight kickbacks being given to the ruling party by companies who are beneficiaries of that of various favors. For example, if the Dassault company wanted to give a kickback to the BJP for the Rafale deal, they would, all that they would need to do would be to open a subsidiary in India and through that buy electoral bonds and give it to the BJP, and nobody would know that 1,000, 2,000, 5,000 crore kickback has been paid to the BJP for securing the Rafale contract, because they have simultaneously with this electoral bond scheme, they have also amended the Foreign Contribution Regulation Act to allow subsidiaries of foreign companies also to donate to political parties, and simultaneously they have also removed the limit on the amount of donations that companies can give to political parties. Earlier the limit was 7.5% of the annual profits.
Yes.
Now that limit has been removed. So therefore, all this has paved the way for kickbacks being paid, and we are seeing that because the ruling party is now getting 95% of the funding through electoral bonds, and we suspect that most of this would be by companies who have been given contracts by the government, who have received various other benefits from the government.
How this money will come to India from the foreign source?
Mr.
How
Ghosh,
this money will come to India? So if
Faye, I just want to ask one simple question to
Dassault
Mr.
opens a
Bhushan.
subsidiary, they
How
can
that
transfer
money will
money to their
legitimately come to
subsidiary.
India?
listen to the answer,
In what
Mr.
format?
Ghosh. He's giving you the answer.
No, even the
Mr. Ghosh,
transferring
through
of money to
subsidiaries, it's really quite
subsidiaries
simple,
is
because
subject
now a
to
majority-owned
verification
foreign company
and
can also
acceptance and
donate.
clearance of the bank.
Because of the FCRA amendment.
So
Mr.
therefore,
Ghosh,
all
the way
that
it
a
works
foreign
is that
company
because of
needs
the
to do
FCRA
is to set up a
amendment,
subsidiary
you now
in
have
India.
a subsidiary that may be
transfer the
majority
money.
One
owned
second,
by
one
a
at a
foreign
time.
company.
Mr. Bhushan's answering the question. Mr.
Yeah,
Bhushan, go
because
ahead.
if they donate,
No, Mr.
if
Ghosh,
they
listen to the
donate, they will
answer.
get an income tax rebate. 80cc, they will get the benefit of 80cc.
Okay, so I just want to point out, just 1 second, I just want to point out to Mr. Ghosh. Mr. Ghosh, the problem here is not that the RBI or the bank account is not tracking. The problem here is that the citizen, the voter who's going to go out to the booth in 2.5 weeks to vote, doesn't know who's given you money. So I don't know when you come to power, if you come to power, whose favors you will be returning. Now, it is my democratic right to have that information, to know whether it is a foreign company or an Indian company or someone buying an electoral bond, who bought the bond, who gave you money, who gave the Congress money, whose favors are you going to be returning when you come to power. It is my democratic right to know that information. That is what we're talking about. Whether the money came in a suitcase or in a bank account makes no difference. I need to know who gave you money.
Faye,
now answer the question. Where is the transparency, Mr. Ghosh?
Exactly. By default, if there is any heavy amount of donation, you are thinking that it's a money for favoritism or it's a money for bribing. Like Mr. Prasad Bhushan has told, the bribing for the salt. This is all euphemistic and arbitrary.
What?
Because a political party runs on donation. The donation could be of different variants. And so if somebody donates me, it doesn't matter that I have to oblige. No. Somebody donates me. If you go to any of the religious personalities, they also receive a lot of donation.
Are you comparing
that
yourself
mean
to a
that they're
god?
being favored or they have to give a counter favor to those donors. All right? No, there's not always God. Not always God. Even there are the
Bhagwan se bhi mannat mangi jati hai, Mr. Ghosh.
Millions of rupees donation. They are not God. But because this institution runs by the donation of funds, basically the institution is a non-profit earning institution. They run by the donation, and the size of the entire population of India, 155 crore.
Okay.
If you have to serve, you need money. Why you are taking that every money needs to be
Mr. Ghosh, please, the entire population of India is being served by the accounts of the government of India, which are different from the accounts of the BJP. You don't need money to serve the country. Please don't do this. Please do not mislead my audience. All right.
And we have given favor to anyone.
Okay, I just want to point out to our audience that there is a difference between the money and the budgets of the government of India that is spent to look after the citizens of this country, and the money and the budgets of political parties. So what we're talking about is funding that has gone to the BJP headquarters and not to the finance ministry, which is used to run the government. So please don't think that this donation is being used in any way to feed the poor and to look after the sick. Ami Yagnik of the Congress
party of the world.
One second.
BJP is the largest party of the world.
Still, you should still disclose where your money comes from. Ami Yagnik of the Congress Party, is it not true that back in 2016, ADR had filed a case with Delhi High Court, and Delhi High Court found the BJP and the Congress Party guilty of violating the FCRA Act, the Act of Foreign Donations to Political Parties from a company called Vedanta? The Congress Party was found guilty. It was only after that the Parliament then went ahead, and I'll say this slowly so my audience can all pick it up. The Parliament went ahead and amended the Foreign Contribution Regulation Act retrospectively to 1976, making all of those dealings legal. And the Congress supported the BJP because what's good for the goose is good for the gander, and everybody is happy. Is that not true, Ms. Yagnik? You are part and parcel of this. You support the BJP in this changing of laws for political funding.
You're referring to the Delhi High Court judgment, yes. The Delhi High Court had come very heavily on both the BJP and the Indian National Congress and has given a lot of observations about the funding that happened to both the parties during that time. when you're talking about the earlier situation before the amendments, I think there was a disclosure clause in the Companies Act, and all the donations that came to the political parties by way of corporate funding was disclosed. But you see, in September 2017, when the 4 amendments came, as earlier mentioned by Mr. Bhushan, under the finance bill, because it was introduced as a money bill, and it came before the Lok Sabha, and it never went to the Rajya Sabha because there was a lot of protest, and those objections were never taken into account because it was put as a money bill, and all the amendments came through. So thereafter, I think you can see what has happened, that the 96% of the donations have gone to the BJP of the electoral bonds, and there is practically no transparency anywhere, and the Companies Act has been amended, the FCRA has been amended, the Income Tax Act has been amended, and so you can see what is the result. Yes, of course, the Election Commission did point out to the government, but even that was not taken into account. The opposition parties also raised a voice, but because it was a money bill and the Lok Sabha had the majority of the BJP, I think it just went through. And you can see even on the YouTube that we have all been protesting and been asking for to be heard. Yes. So I know that the Delhi High Court judgment, but then it was at that time, you know, the amendments were not there. And
if I may ask you this, and Meghnad will clear up because he tracks Parliament for us. But Ms. Yagnik, my question to you is this. The Congress party has received a little over 200 crore rupees or 2 billion rupees via electoral bonds. If you object so fiercely to the lack of transparency, why don't you make it public? Make the names of your donors public.
Yes, of course, ours is, I think, absolutely public and transparent. I think you are asking to the party which has made everything quite public. You are not asking the BJP about the 96%
I'm asking you, Ms. Yagnik,
bond purchase.
Why don't you let us know where your 200 crore rupees came from?
And you're not even talking about the several routes. Well, you'll find it on the INC website, I think. And we are very clear about all this. But I do not understand why you are not asking the BJP any question about the 96% of the bonds taken, and why it has not even bothered to be
so your problem
a very
is that
proper
I'm not asking
party as far as parliamentary democracy is concerned. If the BJP is worried, if it is responsible party
your
and if
point
it is
tonight is to come onto the show and accuse me of not questioning the government of
India.
India.
So much self-interest and so much selfishly.
Don't forget, holding 44 number of seats, you are attracting 200 crores. And holding 284, we are having at least 1,000 crores. We used to serve more than 21 states.
Okay.
Serving more than 80.
All the more reason why you should tell us where the money is coming from, Mr. Ghosh. You haven't told us where the money is coming from. Who gave you 1,000 crore rupees? Tell me who gave you 1,000 crore rupees. Give me the names.
That's what we are talking. The moment it is coming to electoral
bonds,
even we do not know because it is not mentioned.
Is all your funding going to come
it is
from
KYC complaint. What we know that it
sources?
Is a KYC complaint money.
Meghnad S is a journalist who tracks
No,
Parliament.
not at all. It isn't.
And I know that this has been a pain point for you personally, Meghnad. Are any of the answers coming from Mr. Ghosh convincing right now?
That's all we want to know.
Mr. Ghosh, you want to listen to this? Meghnad,
not really, no. So I have... I have a few things to add, basically. Can you hear me?
Yes, loud and clear. Go ahead.
Yeah, so I have a few things to add. Basically, the first thing is that what the Congress spokesperson said about how like we have to point out two things. One, the FCRA was amended twice, not once. First time when it was amended, they retrospectively said that from 2010 the donations will be valid, and that is because Vedanta had made a donation in 2010. So then they had to amend it in 2010. Then the Congress and BJP go together to the Supreme Court saying that the FCRA rules have been amended, so this case should be thrown out. Then in the second phase, they amended it from 1976 onwards. That's 42 years. So it happened twice, not once. And I would strongly oppose to the point that Congress could not talk in Parliament or could not oppose it in Parliament, because they didn't. They had two opportunities, they did not do it, and it's obviously Parliament record is for everyone to see. The second thing about electoral bonds and transparency, I highly object to the point that the BJP spokesperson is saying that it will make bonds, make donations more transparent. Because let's buy their argument that, you know, white money is coming in and, you know, through a legit channel and whatever. But then it doesn't make sense to amend the Foreign Contribution Regulation Act retrospectively then. Because when Mr. Kiren Rijiju was asked this question about why they allowed foreign funding to political parties, he said now CSR funds will come into India and you know, they will become a part of donations. But then it doesn't make sense. Why did they do it retrospectively? They could have done it from that point forward, which is 2017 onwards. So there was definitely an element of hiding something there. And the transparency thing, that the BJP has been saying that we have brought in this electoral bonds to protect donors from getting harassed. Now, if you are saying that you are trying to protect donors from getting harassed, then you are also sort of raising a question on law enforcement agencies, where, you know, if your donor is getting harassed, why are they A, donating to political parties at all? They should be scared. And two, if you are saying that they are harassed, then why aren't you stopping it by the use of you know, law enforcement agencies? You have state governments who do that. You have the national law enforcement agencies to do that. But no, you're not protecting them. And the third and the sort of the most important thing in this whole scenario is the accountability to the people, right? So now, as you said, that, you know, we should know who is donating to political parties. Now, I'm completely, and I'm saying this on air, I'm completely okay with corporates donating to BJP or Congress or whoever it is, as long as they are telling us. I'm okay with that. Because fine, you need money to run, as the spokesperson from BJP said. Yeah, up to a limit, definitely. But I mean, transparency should be there. We should know who is donating to which party, and at the same time, we should be able to also ask the companies why they have donated money to a political party. Because it is our right as citizens. Because if a political party is beholden to a company and not their voters, then what's the point of a democracy even?
Well, I want to ask Mr. Prashant Bhushan this question, and like was raised by Major General Anil Verma at the beginning of the show, the member of Rajya Sabha, Nadeeb-ul-Haq, has written a letter to Venkaiah Naidu pointing out that the government misrepresented or effectively lied to Parliament, saying that it had not received any formal communication from the Election Commission. But now we know that the Election Commission had written numerous letters to the Ministry of Law and the Ministry of Finance, telling both of these ministries that it had concerns about the changes. Does this qualify as breach of privilege, Mr. Bhushan? And what would that mean for this government?
Well, that's certainly a very, very serious matter, and there is no doubt that they lied, because I have seen that question and answer in Parliament where they said that the Election Commission did not object to these electoral bonds, which turned out to be totally false, because thereafter the letters of the Election Commission came out in the public domain, which showed that prior to that question and answer in Parliament, Election Commission had raised very serious objections about the non-transparency involved in these electoral bonds. I'm not sure whether it will qualify as a breach of privilege or not, but it's certainly a very, very serious transgression of parliamentary behavior. Now, there is another thing that I want to point out, Faye. There is another petition which is also in the Supreme Court, along with this petition challenging electoral bonds and the retrospective amendments to the FCRA, as well as the removal of the cap on corporate donations. There is a second petition where we have said that political parties must disclose all their income, which includes all their petty cash income, because even before electoral bonds, there is a route which has been allowed to political parties to just say that 95% of their funds are coming from petty cash donations of less than 20,000 rupees each, which has now been reduced to 2,000 rupees. The reduction from 20,000 to 2,000 makes no difference because the political parties do not disclose, are not obliged to disclose how much donations and what denominations they have got in cash. They just say that we received 1,500 crores in petty cash of under, they used to say under 20,000 each, now they say under 2,000 each. Now our petition says that this has allowed non-transparency of political funding. A lot of black money comes into political parties' hands through this route, and therefore they should be obliged to disclose every rupee that they get, from which source they have got, etc. When the Prime Minister said that he has introduced demonetization to make a cashless economy, I can understand that every citizen cannot become cashless because many of them are illiterate also. They can't do everything through bank transactions. But at least political parties can be made cashless. They can be obliged to take donations only through banking channels. They can be obliged to spend money only through banking channels. But that has not been done, and instead of that a non-transparent instrument of taking funds even through banking channels like electoral bonds has been introduced. I mean, they have gone absolutely the opposite way. Instead of making political funding more transparent, they have gone the opposite way. In fact, there is another problem with our election law, that there is no limit to the spending by political parties. There is a limit to spending by candidates, but no limit on political parties. It's high time that limits were introduced on political party spending for elections also.
Absolutely. Karunanandi, quick question to you. Would you hope that the government, that the Supreme Court at this point, when you say it does intervene, do you hope that the Supreme Court would then instruct political parties to make all of the information on donors public?
You know, I strongly hope that it not only will it be possible to make the list of donors public, but that also that there will be a way in which some kind of limits, not only in receipt but also in spending, can be instituted. Of course, it sort of depends on the technicalities of the prayers that are currently before the court. But in terms of a democratic hope, I think that is something quite important, because you know what, we have a case coming up in possibly in April. It was directed by the Chief Justice that it came up in April. This is the Bhopal case, the curative petition to look at the compensation, to whether the compensation needs to be increased or not. Now, some time ago, there was money from Dow Chemicals, that is the new entity, UCC Dow, that is now merged with DuPont, Union Carbide, taken by the BJP. Now, they say that it was not a large amount and that it was given back. Today, if Dow and DuPont have given large amounts, and they would have an incentive to give large amounts to the ruling party or whoever they think the ruling party is going to be, then that would directly affect the government's stand in such a case. I'm just giving an example. In such a case, and some of the worst off citizens in our country would thereby then suffer. These are the kinds of injustices that have the risk of getting deeply perpetuated. Should these electoral bonds be allowed to flourish in the way that they have?
Which is, and we have run out of time, but I just want to point out to Amiben Yagnik, there is no information on the Indian National Congress's website about where your money is coming from and who your donors are. So you're not any more transparent than the BJP for that matter. And we have seen, like Meghnath pointed out, that you all went to court together and you fought against ADR together, you fought against transparency together, proving that when it comes to money and political funding, you all completely see the same side of the coin. It boils down to this: the Supreme Court is going to hear all of these petitions in a couple of days on the 2nd of April. Right now, there are huge, large sums of money flowing into our political parties. Donors who are anonymous, we will not know who these people are. Corporates, foreign companies, and Indian nationals. We don't know who these people are. We're talking of upwards of 1,000 crore rupees. What is the risk for you and me? When a political party accepts a large amount of money from an individual or a company or a foreign entity, they will be obliged to return the favor in changing laws and making laws that suit these people when they come into power. That's called crony capitalism. We may or may not be able to stop it, but we should know about it. When we go in to vote, we should know where the money has come from and which corporate has helped or is helping this political party fight the election. By knowing that information, it will put us in a better position to make our decision when we vote. That is the very basis of democracy. We appeal to the Supreme Court to intervene and make sure that as citizens of this country, we have access to the information that tells us where the money is coming from, who is funding our political parties, and whose favors are they likely to be obliged to return if and when they come to power.